Today we have a speaker. Well, let me just start with a thought. And we've all gotten back from conference, and boy, conference, what an amazing time. I like what President Mon said. He says, develop a plan for life. And I go, yes, my students are doing that. So when he said that, I felt really good. But this is what President Hinckley said. He says, you are good, but it's not enough just to be good. You must be good for something. You must contribute good to the world. The world must be a better place for your presence. And the good that is in you must be spread to others. In this world so filled with problems, so constantly threatened by dark and evil challenges, you can and must rise above mediocrity, above indifference. You can become involved and speak with a strong voice for that which is right. And so that's kind of our challenge. How do we speak for a strong voice for that which is right? Okay, we're back to the last 3 days. So first of all, I handed around those personal, everything that's been handed in to me. It's graded and it's in that box, so I encourage you to grab that. So when you hand your financial plan in on Thursday, we look and see if there's a number of things that have been graded, and those things, if you didn't hand it in, realize that it's late. But so all the stuff that you hand back today, make sure you punch it and put it into your financial plan.
When we turn the whole thing, you want all of the binder and everything?
Yeah, we want the binder and everything.
The whole thing.
The whole thing. So I want to see a completed financial plan. Questions on that? Now the goals section too. Go ahead.
Can we redo sections to get more?
Right, you can. So anything you lost points on, what you can do is correct it, put it behind the old one, put a yellow tab and say, please regrade. So the rule of thumb is you can gain back half of the points that you lost. And if you're late, when you're late, it's half off, but you can gain back half of those by putting it in there. So even if you're late, you still get 3/4 of the percentages for it. Okay. Other questions on the financial plan that's due on Thursday? So realize it's 10% off a day. So late pieces. So generally what I'd like you to do is hand in everything you've got. If you're late, there may be one section. Hand in everything that you've got done, because that's not late. And then if there's one section that's worth 2 points or something like that, you can bring that in the next day. But you have to put it back in the binder, because I won't do that. Other questions? And again, that financial plan is, like I said, it's probably the most important thing you'll do in this class. Okay. I'm appreciative that Jason Payne is here to speak today. And before I have him speak, I'm just going to read an email I got. It says, Dr. Sedgwicks, a few months ago I discovered your personal finance website from a link off the church's providentliving.org website. I was impressed with its principle-based approach and emphasis on perspective and application. I have referred many people to it since that time. I'm curious as yet as to whether a professional financial services firm or registered investment advisor is using this content in their financial planning services. I recently left Blank Private Wealth Management in part because I did not feel they took a principles-based approach to their clients. Many advisors around make decisions somewhat to the client's detriment to make a higher fee. Have you considered starting a firm with the content as its core ideology? Or do you know of any firms that have? I'm looking to align myself with a principles-based financial professionals. Is a principles-based framework important? I think it is. Again, back to that thought, I teach them correct principles and they govern themselves. So with that, today is our discussion on careers and financial planning. And I asked one of my good friends, Jason Payne, if he'd come and speak. Let me step back a little bit about how Jason and I came to know each other. When I was living back in Arlington, Virginia, there was a 16-year-old kid who joined the church. And he was the football player, star of the basketball team, star of the football team, everything. His name was Dave McKnight. That's getting old. It's for the birds. His name was Dave McKnight. And so he and I were home teaching companions for about 2 years. And he's just a wonderful guy. And when I came back here to BYU, I was at Fazoli's. And who should I run into but Dave McKnight? And so for the next, he told me what he was doing. He was a financial planner. I told him what I was doing. And so for the next 3 years, or 3 or 4 years, I had him come in and spoke to the class. And then he took this position back east he got this wonderful job opportunity. He's just very good. And he says, I'm going back east. He said, this will be my last time. And I said, Dave, I said, you can't leave me without telling me who I should have come and speak to my class. He just, without missing a beat, he says, Brian, there's only one person you want to come. And you just want to have Jason Payne. You just talk to him and tell him that I said it, and he will come, and he'll do a wonderful job. He says, of all the people, he's the best. And so, somewhat with trepidation, I called Jason, and I gave him the story about Dave. And Jason said, sure, I'd love to come. And was that like 7 years ago? Jason's come, 3 times a year to all my personal finance classes. And so I've been very appreciative. He's got a wonderful story, and he's a great resource to have if you have questions. Can we have a big hand for Jason Payne? Here's the passing. Now you feel really official with the passing of the mic. So Jen will put it up higher up. Yeah, perfect. And then just stick that in.
Is this a master's class?
No, this is undergrad.
Awesome.
With some masters.
Okay. It's fun to be here. And this is always kind of a treat for me just because it gets me re-energized and rethinking why I came into the industry and how I did it. In 95, I was getting tired of doing my zoology degree and decided to start into this. And so I started with my best friend selling life insurance for a company called Beneficial Life, which is LDS owned. And as soon as I got licensed, he quit to go get a real job, and I just kind of fell in love with it. But eventually what I fell in love with was the investment side of it and the actual planning, doing the plans for people. So I will point out that the plans you have that you're creating, we do about 90% of that. So you really are coming out of this class. I think it's one of the few classes you can come out of college with that actually has really good concrete information for you for the rest of your life if you abide by the principles that you've been taught in this class and the lessons that you did. So I think that's pretty cool. How many of you enjoyed doing the plans? Wow, that's probably the most hands we have ever seen. So that's really good. I have to make a disclosure. I had a root canal yesterday on top of a root canal. So if I start to slur, there's a little Tourette's that sneaks in there. Please forgive me. That won't happen. But my wife's like, you better not say anything. So, but the plans are huge. One of the things that I'd encourage you to do is after you do it is do not ignore these plans. What we have found when we're creating plans for people is we'll create it and we put it in a binder like you have, and it goes home with the client. But what happens once it goes home to the house? Goes on the shelf. What does it ever come off the shelf? It does when the wife, I'm just picking on the wives for a second, need it for a scrapbook binder for the first or second kid. Okay, then it comes out and the kid pictures go in it, and then that goes into a file drawer. So what we have found is we keep the plan to our in the office, and then when we meet with our clients on a regular basis, we bring out those parts of the plan that need to be reviewed. But we have everything online as well, so they have access to it online. But the plan is the most important part because it gives you a roadmap of where you're trying to go. More importantly, it gives you some benchmarks of where you should be. And when life hits you, you can adjust those plans and make sure that things are good. But I'm going to intertwine some stories. I'll tell you what I like about the industry, what I really don't like about the industry. How many of you are planning on going into financial planning of some sort? Accounting? Okay. Banking services? Okay. So how many of you, actually, by the time you get through the next 5 years, you're going to have sat down with somebody that's kind of like me or sort of like me in some form or fashion. So there's going to be some questions we want you to ask them as you're working with them. So in 97, I wasn't making enough money. I was commission-based, so everything that I touched, meaning any investment dollar that I had that a client gave me, I received a commission up front for it. I just wasn't making enough money doing that, and so I took a job at Stouffer's, Springville. Nestle, it's the big plant out there in Springville. They have a crew that goes in and cleans up, and I did that for about 6 months, spraying off the machines, getting them ready for the morning shift. But then after that, I thought, man, this is no fun. It's wet, it's dirty. So I went and drove forklift in their freezer that they keep at -10 to get those things. They flash freeze the food. Much better than cleaning up the stuff. But I did that for 2 years at midnight, and then during the day I'd work on my business and get it established enough to where I could support my family. Why is that important? And the reason I tell you that is because I believe if you find something that you love, you know, there's going to be a price that has to be paid, some form or fashion. Doesn't mean you have to take another job. I happen to have an incredibly patient wife that allowed me to go through this process to get to a point where the business was good. So with that said, there's things in my life that I look for. Whenever I'm working with professionals, first of all, I'm trying to figure out, do they love what they do? If someone loves what they do, what kind of work are you going to get from them? The best. You know, even if technically they're not skilled, you're going to get their best work. And so for me, I love what I do, and so I always want to make sure that we're continually bringing our best work forward and that we're always trying to improve the services we bring to our clients. So for me, that was a big thing, is I only want to work with people in my life that have passion for what they do and they're really good at it, because then it becomes a lot more fun in life. So after that, I've been in 2 different partnerships, business partnerships, which I learned a lot. I probably learned more what not to do. And then I opened up my own advisory service in 2001, where about 95% of our revenue comes recurring revenue, meaning fee-based revenue. And that comes in 2 forms. Either we charge an asset fee on assets that we manage, okay, there's no commissions on it, or we just charge an hourly fee or a project fee. And we do both, and it just depends on what the clients are comfortable with and what they prefer. Do you understand the difference between commission-based and fee-based? Let me go over it really quick. So on 100 grand, in a commission account, let's say roughly, you know, there's a 5% upfront fee. So I get 5 grand up front, go home, make a house payment, buy some food and those kind of things. That's a pretty good deal for who? For me, because I get it up front. Okay, so if the client walks tomorrow and doesn't like me, I get my money up front. On a fee-based, it's that same thing, but I'm going to just say generally 1%. Okay? I get 1%, but it takes me 13 months to get it all. Okay? I get 1/12 of that per month. Okay? So over time, my incentive is I want this 100,000 to grow. Okay? I don't want it to drop. The other incentive you have with this is that if it's commission-based, that next year I'm looking for more and more clients. And we do want to grow, but I cap my clients that I work with personally at 125, because then it allows me to have the time to do that. And you're going to find advisors that are shifted more to this model have the ability to take care of your needs and wants a lot better than if someone's strictly commission-based. By 2001, I had 700 different clients, whether it was a life insurance, a mutual fund, or a stock, and I couldn't service them all. So when all of a sudden the market starts to correct in 2000, people are literally thinking I'm watching their money. The reality is I had very little knowledge of what was going on because I had so many accounts, and I was just trying to make enough money to survive because I received all that commission up front. Does that make sense? You want to be compensated, your advisor, so it keeps him in the game. There's going to be, I'll call this dragon number 4, and I'll explain the other 3 dragons in a minute. Cost. When it comes to investment, what is the direct, when it comes to returns, what's the direct, the number 1 impact to your returns? Is cost. It really is. I'll prep that with a few other things. You've got to reduce the cost on your investments to get good returns over time. If I'm taking 1% over 30 years, that's a ton of money that comes out of a client's pocket into mine. So why would they hire me? Why would you hire somebody like me? You can, because of why?
I think a lot of people do it because they have no idea.
They have no idea, okay.
You can do it. You can make a better return than I could if I just did it on my own.
Okay, better return, and we'll talk about that. That's good.
I think the hope would be that your return would be like at least double 1%, so like 2% above normal market, like average returns.
Okay.
That's what I would look at. So like you'd be worth 1% to me if you could do 2% better than like an index fund.
Okay, cool. All right. Historically, though, going back to what this last gentleman said, long term, it doesn't work. People pay me, because if the index performed, how many active funds outperform the index?
There's more like last year it was like 38%.
38%. Yeah, it's not very many people that can outperform the index. So with that said, if we're charging 1%, we're going to actually more than likely do less than the index by probably 1%, depending on the year. The reason people hire me is because they're getting to a point in their life where they don't want to do it. They don't have the ability or knowledge to do it and don't want to. A lot of times people are heading off on LDS missions here locally. They're running a business, they're running a family, and they just can't do it. And so yes, we will perform better than them because we spend all our time doing it. Does that make sense? So we bring a concerted effort to it, and that's what they pay for. But the question is, when do you need somebody like me? For everybody, it's going to be different. You have built a plan, and I bet you within your allocation, your investment allocation, your diversification, you talked about using low-cost funds, index funds, those kind of things, broad diversification, right? Vanguard, T. Rowe Price, those kind of funds, I like it. Use those as much as you can, and then as you get into a point where you need an advisor, then you step into it. But then you understand what you're paying for, because it's just not the fact that we make returns. We have clients that make over $250,000 in a year. And so for them, if we have a brokerage account, just a non-IRA account, every time we make a trade on that, Uncle Sam now takes an additional 3.8%. Does that stink? It's the surtax that just passed this last year. So what we do is we facilitate, because most of the people that we work with have some kind of charitable donations. So we'll make those charitable donations out of those accounts. We can shoot it to their charity of choice. Okay, so let's say we sent one for 50 grand. We can sell, it was some Apple stock that we sent. So we can send Apple stock to the charity. We have no sales transaction, and then we can literally have that person give us the 50 grand in cash, and we can rebuy Apple. Does that make sense? So there's a lot of things that we get paid for that have really nothing to do with the investment allocation that we do. It's all the other planning that we do. It's all the stuff that we touch. So that's what they're paying for. And so make sure whenever you get into a relationship with somebody, just understand what you're paying for. And I think that's key. So any questions on that? We'll come back to that in a minute. This is why fear and greed, one of the reasons people hire me as well. So the idea when it comes to financial advising and investments especially is you have to mitigate fear and greed. Greed, I want to make a ton of money, and there's this really cool deal, and I'm going to get on the ground floor opportunity of it. How often have you heard that? Okay? A lot. How often does it work? Very, very rarely. I can't remember who the quote was, but I think it was Warren Buffett that said, with $1 million in a hot stock tip, I can go broke in a day. And when it comes to greed is the thing you have to mitigate probably the most. But what you have in my industry, and with anything that you're in, you have fear and greed, and the really good ones can flip you back and forth where they get you really fearful. You don't want to lose money, do you? No. But here's a really cool opportunity that you can never lose money on. Oh, so that hits your greed button. And they go back and forth with your emotions, and a lot of times you don't know what's happening. The reason I bring it up is you'll become aware of it as someone starts to flip between your greed and your fear, and they get to a point where they hit your fear button so much that when they bring the solution, your greed buttons kind of override any rational thought that comes across with it. Does that make sense? One of the things that we find mitigate these two things especially well is savings, having money in the bank. You'll wonder why there's a certain amount of savings that have to be done or in place. It mitigates fear and greed. The other one is you have to have no debt. You have to eliminate your debt. And once you have no debt or very little debt and savings, it gives you the ability to mitigate between these two. We had a client, he lives in Colorado, and he does really well in the construction trade. And so he calls and says, hey, we usually try to get our clients to call us when they're going to make a big transaction. I'm going to buy this truck. It's actually going to be for my wife. She's in the business as well. It's going to be a Suburban where they can haul the kids and everything, and it has the really cool drop-down screen so the kids can be entertained. Because we don't want to talk to our kids when we're driving, just so you know. We want quiet time. So we want to ignore our kids when we're driving. And he's going to buy it brand new. The business can write it off, 55 grand. And so he's talking about, what kind of rate should there be? I'm like, what do you mean? What kind of rate? You have the money to pay for it in cash. Why don't you pay cash for it? Well, I don't want to spend my money. Okay. I said, well, then when you go to buy a truck, only buy a truck that you're willing to pay cash for. What amount? Does that make sense? So I said, if you're to pay cash for something and take it out of your cash, how much would you be willing to give up? And he said 30 grand. So I'm like, well, go find something for 30 grand. Does that make sense? Debt, again, hits our greed button. We can have this and this and this and this, and it's only a $500 or $600 payment. But you add 5 or 6 of those or 7 of those, and all of a sudden you're thousands of dollars in debt monthly, and you're not getting anywhere. So the idea behind having lots of cash, and what's funny about it, they haven't actually bought the vehicle. I called, this has been 6 months, I'm like, you bought that yet? No, we don't want to. We'd rather save up more. Once you have savings, a substantial amount of savings, you like to have a good cushion, and so they don't want to invade that cushion that they've established for themselves. And so that's good, because then when fear and greed start to battle each other, they have some weapons that can actually give them some strength to counteract that. Does that make sense? Never ever take debt, credit card, home, anything to go into an investment. What does that do to your fear and greed if you use debt to make an investment? Does it make it worse? Does it heighten it? It does. You know, you take somebody that takes 100 grand off their house to go into an investment that's really cool, because you can always make money, because you're going to make 10% over here and your mortgage is going to be 5%, and you're going to make this arbitrage of 5%. Sounds good, right? Until the investment is lost or starts to go down. And what does that client start to do? They start to panic, and they start to make really bad choices. So when it comes to making your investments, my philosophy is never use debt. It's pretty conservative, but I know if we have clients who are using debt to do their investments, they're going to make really, really bad choices, because things happen like 2008 and 2009. 2001 and 2. You're going to have turns in the market, you have turns in real estate, you're going to have turns where things just destroy people financially. But if we have the ability to have cash and no debt, our fear and greed, we can make some pretty good decisions. And that's what my job is. That's what I get paid for, is to help people make good choices with their money. Does that make sense? Okay, we're going to talk about my 3 dragons. Who's seen How to Train a Dragon? Okay, it's one of my favorite animated stories. So you got all these dragons, and they go into the little pit, okay? And that little scrawny kid has figured out which dragons, some of them are afraid of things, and some of them just like him because they brought him something that they like, right? Okay? So 3 dragons. The first dragon is market risk. You with me on this? Okay, the first dragon that you have to overcome or understand is market risk. It can be stock market, bond market, real estate market. It can be the CDs that don't pay us anything right now, savings. Anything that you consider an investment, I lump under market risk. You have to understand market risk, what you're investing in, and the time frames in which those things work well. Has the stock market worked well in the last 12 years? Has it? For returns. Has the stock market worked well for returns in the last 12 years? Let me change it the other way. Has the bond market been better than the stock market? Yes. Okay. So when you look at market risk specific to stock, it's been rough. But when you look at the long-term average of the stock market, I'm getting pretty excited, because it's a pretty good time. For a bond market, when you look at the bond market, the times have changed a little, so it changes your allocation some. Real estate, so whenever you're in whatever you're in, you need to understand the long-term nature of these cycles that those investments are in. So market risk is the first thing you have to understand to overcome, and more information you have will help you do it. So a lot of times we're just giving our clients really good information, like, this, bear market that we've been has been 12 and a half, 13 years, the average 14, give them some more information. And after every bear market, there's going to be a bull market. Okay, and you're starting to see a lot of that start to change over the last couple of months. So market risk is the first one. This is the one that everyone forgets about, is inflation. This is dragon number 2. You have to understand how inflation impacts your money. And especially it's going to impact your retirement. You guys probably really aren't thinking retirement. You're not even out of college yet. But who's thinking about retirement that you know? Brian? Okay? I am. I just turned 42, so I'm starting to think about retirement a lot more. Your parents, your aunts and uncles. Okay? This is huge. People do not realize how quick inflation can jump on them, especially during retirement. Retirement, you know, for you guys, I think that they publish it around 3.5%, 4%. But for someone retired, their inflation rate sits close to 6%. Okay? So you have to get ahead of inflation. And so when you have your money invested, do CDs make sense? Do they get ahead of inflation? They don't. But you have savings that's for short-term emergencies and things, but you have to have your money ahead of you. And so when a lot of people say, I don't want to lose principal, well, what are you talking about? I give you 100 grand, I don't want that 100 grand to be worth less. Well, where'd you like me to put it? I like you to put it in savings. Okay, in a year, it's going to be worth really 96,000 because inflation just ripped 4% from it. Does that make sense? Those are conversations you need to be having, and we have with people, because if they forget inflation, they wake up one day and realize things cost a whole lot more, you know, now than they did 10 years ago. So that's an important dragon that we have to keep people reminded of, because when you have 2008 happen, Brian and I served on a board of directors together at Kids on the Move, and I history where they had this endowment, and they decided to go from cash and to go into the stock market. Well, they went into the stock market, I think right at 2000 somewhere, just got hit, and they did a lot of individual equities, individual stocks, tended to be more tech-driven. So as the tech market came down, they got hit hard. And so they panicked, their fear kicked in, and so they went to cash. And then they stayed in cash for a little bit and then decided, hey, bonds are safe. And so they went into the bonds at the height of that market as it was rolling through. And then the bonds came down again, and then they went to cash. And so then Brian steps in, and he says, hey, we got to go back into the market. We're going to build an investment policy statement. You guys have heard of that?
In fact, their investment policy statement was 95% of what yours was.
Yeah.
So it's very similar.
And so they finally got it back into the market, and then 2008 hit.
Oh.
And it just started coming down and coming down. And the board of directors got split. You know, there's two, I think, that left the board of directors because they didn't agree with the way the money was being invested. But I understood, and Brian understood, hey, inflation, for what they want this for, really what they want it for, we have to get ahead of inflation. We understood the market risk, but a lot of people didn't understand what the market risk, and as hard as we tried to educate them, they just weren't going for it. So a couple guys relieved them, you know, just said, hey, we're done with the board. We're not going to do this anymore if you're going to invest that way. It's actually up and above board from where it was, because the board that was remaining could understand what was going on with the market, also with inflation, and what the details of the investment were. And it's worked out well. The problem is they have to mitigate fear and greed. And the board of directors, they're not a bunch of dumb guys on the block. They're smart people. But fear and greed can even get the smartest, most brilliant people to get off course. Does that make sense? Behavior. That's you. Is dragon number 3. Dragon number 3 is you. You have to contain your behavior. If your retirement is 40 years away and the stock market in 2008 has a little gyration and you sell it and go to cash, is that the right behavior? It's not. So you have to understand what your goals are, and that's what your advisors today, hey, this is your goal, this is you're on track, here's all the fun stuff, here's all the bad stuff. But if you cannot get out of your own way, you're going to be cataclysmic to yourself. You're going to cause more damage to yourself than anybody else will. So forget the advisors that are out there that I think give you bad product and don't steer you in the right way. You yourself can mess it up more than anybody else. So once you take into consideration market, inflation, your behavior, number 4 would be the cost. You need to make sure you minimize your costs moving forward so that you have more money. One of the things that we do for our clients is we actually disclose not only all the fees, but the revenue that comes to my office. So, you know, if we're charging 1%, we don't get 1%, we get 0.8 of that, okay, to pay our bills and our staff and those kind of things. So we disclose not only all the fees, but when the revenue goes and how it breaks down and who gets part of it. You know, we want that transparency. If we do receive something that has like an upfront commission, we disclose that to the client to make sure that they are understanding where that revenue is coming from us. Because how many of you bought a car? Most of us. Okay, a lot of us have transacted in different sales environments. Have you ever wondered, how much is this guy making? I do every time. And so in my business, I just prefer to tell people. Just tell them, then they can make a really good decision. Because you're not going to put them into a product that's going to have really high commissions, because there's a direct correlation. If there's a high cost, usually their return's going to have a diminishing return. So that's usually how that works.
And it was interesting, I was listening to the radio on Saturday, and this guy was talking, selling an insurance products, and he says, well, you don't have to worry about, because I don't charge any commissions. The insurance company pays me. And I'm going, boy, talk about sleight of hand.
It is a sleight of hand, and they're big commissions when they get paid. Let me tell you, she was in this class, I think about 10 years ago. Her and her husband, she's actually a second cousin to me, but they just turned 35 in September, and they paid off their house. How cool is that? 35, the home's paid for. So I'm going to go back to President Hinckley's quote. Oh, did you have, you were good, but it's not enough to just be good. You must be good for something. You must contribute good to the world. This is where and we see this time and time again. The reason I say 35, the reason I'm giving you this story is because they relate probably more to you than if I'm giving you a story of someone that just turned 60 and they just paid off their house. Age 35, they paid $180,000 for this house here in Orem. So it's not like they bought this little hole. They bought a really nice home a while ago, and their whole focus was to get the thing paid for. Okay? So when they say their focus, their behavior, they didn't buy 2 cars, they had one. He had a scooter to go to work, and he worked close, so he could do that. They didn't take a big family trip. You know, they're starting to take those now. They spent very little money. They were really frugal, and they just focused all their money because their number one goal was what? Pay off the house. Was it retirement? No. Was it kids' education? No. All the stuff that we're supposed to be planning for? No, their number one goal is to pay off the house, and they did it in September. What's cool about this is before he paid this off, he never made more than $80,000 or $85,000 a year, which seems like a lot, but man, there's some people that just can't survive with $85,000 a year. No debt and savings. So when President Hinckley talks about you need to do more, you need to be good, how much good can they be if they don't have a house payment? Think about this for a moment. What good can they do to people around them or people that they know if they don't have a house payment? Thoughts? And we see it time and time again as our clients pay their homes off. 2/3 of our clients have their homes paid for, which is really kind of cool. It changes who they are as a person. So let me tell you what goes on. All of a sudden, their neighbor gets hit with some kind of financial tragedy, and they have the ability, because they had a house payment at one time, that if they need to cover a house payment, they can. I don't know how many I've seen our clients pay house payments for people even before the church steps in, just because they know they've been hit with something, or they have the ability financially to do it. When you have no debt and you have savings, it allows the Spirit to work within you and to use your means to do a little more good. I think when President Hinckley is talking about this, there's a lot of ways you can do it. And when it comes to financially, this is one of those ways. It doesn't mean spoil your kids, because you don't want to do that. But the Spirit will whisper things for you to do if you have the ability to do it. Okay? I think it whispers to you even if you're in a truckload of debt, just to try to teach you. When Haiti happened, it was amazing to see how much money flowed to Haiti just from our clients' accounts because they were charitably inclined and they don't have debt. When you don't have to worry about debt in your monthly calculations and different things, really good things can happen for you. So I have a quote. We always tell our clients, debt is always the enemy of growth. Debt is always the enemy of growth. And we're not talking financially. The growth I'm talking about is your marriage, your kids. Okay? Spiritually, your neighbors, just being a good person. Debt eliminates or stops your growth in so many areas of your life. It's awesome to see when people get to the point where they don't have the debt, that they can just breathe and then they can actually really truly see the needs of others, and it's a fun process to see. So that's really what we're talking about is savings, debt, no debt, investments. It's just numbers on paper. But really what happens is, how many of you ever had a car that you had a payment on and then paid it off? Okay. So here's what happens. So if people are used to debt, that's kind of what you're used to. And you don't know any difference. But once you get like your car paid for or your student loans paid for, and you don't have that monthly anchor just sitting on you, you feel a lot better. You walk a little taller. You know, you can have better conversations with people. But when you get your home paid for, literally it's about 6 months where you're going to be in a conversation, and this couple that just turned 35 have had it happen already. You're in a conversation, and your neighbor over here is talking about their house payment of $1,800 a month and how big of a drag. And literally our client says, well, why do you have a house payment? They forget they actually had a house payment, and they forget that they had debt. You will get to a point, once you're debt-free. My dad does it all the time. Why do you still have a house payment? Dad, I know 2008 slowed me down, but in 3 years it'll be done. Well, you're an idiot. You should just have it paid for. Well, I paid for mine in cash. You did not. You know, I'm your advisor. You know, I know your story. So but literally people who have had a house payment, it takes about 18 months, and they literally forgot that they ever had one. It's the craziest thing, and it's fun because I think it brings them to be more well-grounded financially. They can see most of the time through fear and greed like crazy, and that's awesome. So my encouragement is to get debt-free as quick as you can. You have to get debt-free. You have to have savings and build savings, not just because it's a great return in the savings, because it's not, but because there's going to be opportunities where you're going to be able to help others, help yourself, or do things for people that will reward you more spiritually than it will maybe monetarily. And, you know, so this is where it's fun. But you guys are coming out of school, you probably have some student loan debt, you got a car maybe. You guys have to buy a house. And gosh dang, kids, they cost money. You guys are going to be having kids, they're going to cost money. But again, your focus, and this is the key when it comes to goals. This couple that I'm talking about, their number one goal was to pay off their house. Did we fund their Roth IRAs? No. Should we have? I don't think so. Their 401k, he did put into their 401k because he had a free match. And that's my exception to the rule. If you have a 401k and you're working for somebody and they give you a free match, take the free money. Get the money working for you. But it's really funny because they're like, when can we? I said, no, your main goal, pay off the house. So when you start to set your goals, you probably set 4 or 5 goals. We try to have the client identify their number one goal. If you can only accomplish one goal, what is it? And then we start to funnel all the money there. You know, because now they have 18 grand that they can spend on retirement. How cool is that? 18,000 plus an additional 10% they're going to take from the 401k anyway. So it's not like they take that money and spend it and go crazy. They start to put money aside and they start to build up their retirement savings, and it'll build quick. So it doesn't take long when you don't have any debt payments to take care of that. So when you look at your goals, you have to really focus in how important is this goal. A long time ago, they're not clients with us any longer, but this couple came in and they could not save a lick. And he was making really good money. He was spending a lot of money, but she was spending more. She had a friend that had a ton of money, and whenever she got a new F-150, she would get one too, and they would deck it out. I mean, literally, the last truck she had bought, monthly, her payments were $1,000, okay? And this is 10 years ago. So she was just getting killed on the payments. It was a really good-looking truck, but forget the cost of insurance and the cost of gas. It was killing them. And so the goal was if they could have X amount of dollars in savings, that she could keep the truck. And so that's the consequence. It came that if they couldn't hit these goals that they had, that she would have to sell the truck. And she agreed to it. And we do it by quarter. So the first quarter they didn't hit their mark. Their second we gave them kind of a freebie and just said, okay, let's get to the second. They didn't. And then the third they didn't. And she refused to sell the truck, you know. And so when you get your heart set on these tangible items like she was, it's hard. And they ended up getting divorced, not because of me, but just because they had a lot of other issues other than that. But when you start looking at that kind of money for a truck that depreciates, her value structure is different. And it brings me to the next question. Can you help everybody? No. You guys took this class because you guys want to learn more about it. You have an interest in it. You want to make good choices with your money. Most people just want money coming in so they can go spend it and have the quick fix. It's important to understand, and my biggest thing that I have question for my industry is that I work with people that have money, that have savings, that have desires to be the best that they can in their own field, or being the best mom that they can be. So for me, it gets really hard when you have people who are just straddled with debt because of bad decisions. Because first of all, it's not profitable for us to do it, and more importantly, they're not going to want to pay us to help them because they've got so much debt and they're just running month to month. So make sure as you look at your goals and you go through them, understand what's the most important goals that you want to accomplish, and understand the why behind it. If you understand the why behind it, you'll be more motivated to get there. So this couple at 35 don't have a house payment, don't have a car payment, they have enough money set aside to buy another car. Okay? When you have $1,800 or $1,200 a month flowing through, you can do a lot of neat things for your financial future. And you don't have to be making a lot of money. My mom, she started working at a clinic just as a receptionist years ago for health insurance. And she just retired. And what was interesting about it, she's never made more than $10 an hour, and she maybe works 30 hours a week. But in 5 or 6 years, she put away quite a bit of money. It doesn't take much to put money away. You just have to be dedicated to it and make sure you do it. Questions on that stuff? How long do we go to? Awesome. So now we get to just tell you fun stories. Okay, so one of the things that Utah County's pretty popular for are investment scams. It just happens to be that we have an FBI office here locally in Utah County in Provo, in the Riverwoods. So how sad is that? Okay, it's the smallest per capita office that they have in the Bureau. That's awesome. Bunch of Mormons. Okay, so with that said, there's a lot of times people, they call it affinity fraud, where people will say, hey, we're in similar organizations like the same church, or they start to talk about themselves or the church, their callings and different things. I tend to run away from that. When that comes up in a conversation, it's usually a sign that they're trying to build relationships of trust, which we were taught in the MTC, okay? But when it comes to transacting money or business, I tend to refrain from that. So you want to make sure that when you're looking at investments, and we'll spend some time on this, some questions I would ask, and I'd write this down. Number one, how much do you make in me doing this? Or just remember that if you can remember it. How much do you make? Get a list of all the costs and all the fees. And this is with any investment, anybody that you work with.
And make sure how much do you make from the insurance company?
Understand, Brian hits a good point. I'm fully licensed, I'm a CFP. I can handle and touch any investment that's out there. A lot of people that come across, they have the perception that they're an advisor, that they can handle everything. But they can't. They might only be able to sell life insurance, or they're just selling their product that might be in violation of the SEC rules. So you need to understand how they're licensed. How do they get into this career? Where are their licensing? Where's their stuff? Because that dictates a lot of times on the recommendations they give you. If they can only sell you life insurance, because that's the only thing they're licensed to do, that's what they're going to show you. They're not going to show you anything else.
And also, if they're a captive, if they're from one company, they probably only sell their products. They
Yeah.
can't sell other people's products too. So
Yeah, it's, like I said, I love my industry. This morning I got a call from a client that I knew as mother-in-law. She's not a client, but she had just passed away this morning. But it's kind of rewarding when I get a call, say, hey, she passed away, and they're a really good client, and more than anything, just so we're aware that we can help do some things for him and his wife. But it's an awesome industry. If you're interested in getting into it, you just got to just ply yourself into it, because it's really about people. It has nothing to do with the investments, it has nothing to do with the money. It has everything to do with the relationships. Yeah, we get paid and we do really good work, but what we want to make sure is that people have a peace of mind so that they can focus on the things that they're most important, what's most important to them. So, swinging this back to investment scams or any product you're buying, understand first of all what you're doing. My industry, when I say my industry, this includes everybody that portrays to be themselves an advisor, even the stuff you see on the internet. Most of them don't understand the products they're selling. You guys understand probably more than 90% of the people that have been in this industry for 3 or 4 years. Does that make sense? You guys have had a more well-rounded education on investments and planning and all of that stuff than most people just starting off getting their license and those kind of things. So be confident in that. And so when people are coming around trying to sell you stuff, ask them the questions. How much are the fees? What's going on? How do you get compensated? What, for this commission that I'm paying, what are the services I'm going to get back? Have that in writing. We have a 110-point checklist we give our clients. This is what we're going to do this year, and we're going to do it every year after that. So you want to make sure that you have something in writing that says what they're going to do. Most of them don't. The other thing is on investment scams, because we are the white crime capital of the country, evidently. So just be careful. The thing that hurts me most is when you have somebody that's close to retirement, they hit fear. And then all of a sudden they get really greedy because they think they can make a lot of money in a short time, and it ends up being devastating. They're not a client, but they came to us and they said, hey, have you heard about the Iraqi dinar? I think it's a scam, because why would you, Iraqi dinar, it's a currency play, meaning you got the old Iraqi currency, the U.S. came in, occupied, so they're using the dollar right now. But when the U.S. leaves Iraq, it goes back to this dinar, and it's supposed to appreciate in value. Usually what they do is they reprint currency, they get a new currency, and they start fresh. So does that make sense? So this client, well, I can't even say a client, it was a neighbor when we lived in Springville. They bought, literally, they cashed in the 401k, they mortgaged the house. I think it was close to 150 grand. And when this thing matures, it's supposed to be like 25 million. Does that sound right to you guys?
I just think it's funny. So I was donating blood one time, and this guy, Lilabonis or whatever, was asking me, about my background in Colonial Accounting, and he asked me about Iraqi dinar, and he got really excited and said that he had somebody that he was taking their blood, and he told him about this investment. So he invested $5,000. Like, this guy obviously doesn't make much, but he invested $5,000, and he was expecting to have a huge return, and all I did is smile and say good luck. I didn't want to just crush his dreams, always poking at his.
It is. You crush a few dreams of people like, what do you think? You're toast. And you have to think through this rationally, and you'll see it also with gold and silver. Anything that's really a hot item, the Iraqi dinar, basically you could buy a $100,000 note for Iraqi dinar for $250 US. Seems like a good deal. This is where fear and greed gets into play. Fearful that I'm not going to have enough money for retirement. Greedy that I'm going to spend some money and do this. Let me ask you this. If I was selling you this note for $250, but I'm telling, hey man, when this comes due, 100 grand, it's going to be awesome. Why would I ever sell it for 250? If I know that it's going to come back up, even if it comes up 10%. Does that make sense? So when you look at these deals and you're looking at things, just kind of try to get common sense into it. And it was Ben Franklin that says the problem with common sense is that it's not very common. Okay? So to me, they just gobbled this up. They see millions and millions and millions of dollars. And how it came to be is his daughter asked me, hey, what do you think about this? And I just said, it's a scam. It's all over the press. It's all over the SEC website. And she just got crushed. I'm like, why? Oh, my parents. I'm like, oh, great. This guy's getting ready to retire. He works for the government, so he's been sequestered, So they're looking down this pipeline for the rest of their life thinking, this stinks, okay? You don't want that to happen. The toughest part, did you have something?
Well, I was just saying, there's a lot of people, I pay my tithing, so any stupid idiot it was automatically going to work for it.
Yeah.
It doesn't work.
It doesn't. This.
That's not what the lesson the Lord's trying to teach. He's trying to teach us to study and out of our mind, and ask questions and learn about it.
We're messed up as a society. We really are. When you mix in our gospel, our culture, money, tithing, we can really get taken off some really strange paths. But we literally have people tell us that. It'll work out because I pay tithing. Not if you make really dumb mistakes. Because I know when I make dumb mistakes, I still have to pay the consequences for them, regardless of the blessings that come somehow, somewhere else. So when you look at any investment that comes to you, you put in X amount of dollars, it's going to return this big amount. Why would I ever sell this to you if I think it's going to go big? You see the same thing with gold. You don't see it so much now because gold's come down in price, but the last 18 months, you have all these commercials on TV and cable and everywhere. You got to buy gold, you got to buy gold, you got to buy gold. Well, if you know gold's going to go to $2,800 an ounce, why are you going to sell it to me for $1,500? Does that make sense? Why are you willing to give up another $1,000 per ounce profit if you know it's going to go? So when it comes to that, they're just trying to hit your fear and greed. The funniest thing about that is in the last couple of weeks, gold and silver have been pulling back. Silver's off, I think, 25% from 4 months ago. And so now everybody's like, I don't like silver. Why? Well, it comes down in price. Because there's a falsehood that certain things never come down in value. If you're in an investment, can it go up? Can it go down? Yes. I don't care what you've invested in, it can go up and it can go down. And it goes back to this. What kind of market are you in, and do you truly understand it and why it's there? And do you understand the time frames that you should be invested in to make that work? We had a client who, this is actually a really sad story for me because I actually went to the kids on the other side of this story. So we had a client who, we get this notification, he called and said, hey, we've moved. I'm like, really? They bought this house in Spanish Fork up by the golf course. And they got a smoking deal for it. It's like a $500,000 house they got for $250,000. Good deal, right? Good deal. They came in and basically paid cash for it. And I said, well, who owned the house previous? And they gave me the name. I actually went to school with their kid and knew him. I grew up in Spanish Fork and I live there now, so I know who they're talking about. I also know that this couple the couple that lost their house, they lost it in foreclosure. It was their dream home. Okay, and they're 65, but they had built quite a bit of real estate. And this isn't a hack on real estate, but they'd built a lot of real estate, and when the markets were coming up, the appreciation would happen in the real estate. They'd take out the excess equity, take debt to build to build up these properties, and it makes sense as long as the markets continue to do what? Go up. So the markets didn't go up, they came down, so all of a sudden their commercial condos and some of the stuff that they had commercially, people went out of business, they couldn't pay their rent. So all of a sudden they have a huge amount of debt that has to be paid. And they can't support that. They lost every one of their properties, and they're 65. Okay? So what stinks about that? It was the simple rule of they had too much debt. Okay, they should have had no debt at that point in their life. And they got greedy at the end of their retirement trying to make this thing work. And the other thing that you know when you're at the end of a market rally or thing is because, I don't know if you remember it, Brian, but in 2000, there was over 200 funds that went over 100% in the year. Sorry, 1999. In 1999, there were over 200 small cap funds that went over 100%. How cool is that? I had a client move his account on me because we did 115 and his neighbor did 125. Backwards, and I'm trying to get him back to rebalance, to diversify that back out. So here's the key. The NASDAQ, and here's what was said. The NASDAQ, that technology has changed the world forever. It will never come down. It always comes down, okay? And in 2005, 6, and 7, you never lose money in real estate. It always goes up. Okay? And that's what they got caught in. They believed that real estate was always going to go up. They're making so much money. They truly did not understand the market that they were in, not just Spanish Fork or Utah County, long-term how real estate trends go. Everything goes up, everything comes down, and it just depends on where you're at in the cycle. What's funny about that is I had a client in 2006 start to sell all of his properties off. How smart was that? He got a lesson taught to him in the early 80s when there was that real estate boom again, and he got killed. He's like, man, this smells and stinks. It's the same stuff. And so he started selling it off. And so when everything had collapsed, what did he have? He had cash. He had opportunities. He had some cool things that he could go buy. So does that make sense? You need to learn. You need to be I love financial history. And the more I do this business, the more I read history. And we're talking back to the 1400s. What's funny, just a caveat for you, Spain declared bankruptcy in the 1500s 3 times. And they held 3/4 of the world's reserve in silver. Isn't that funny? They couldn't pay their bills because they were going to a paper currency and no one wanted silver anymore. So it's just kind of a funny thing as you start to see history. It does repeat itself. I do agree with that. But very rarely does it ever change the outcome because you have fear and greed driving the markets. And you have to understand where you fit within that. So a couple of scams that we've seen recently, Iraqi dinar is still it kind of comes and goes every 6 months. Whenever there's this release that the U.S. is going to leave Iraq for good, it gets a little more popular. I would say the one that we're combating the most right now is whole life insurance. It's not necessarily a scam. I don't want to say that it's a scam, but there's just a lot of people just going into whole life as the ultimate solution for their retirement planning. I find, first of all, the people selling it don't understand what they're selling to people. Second of all, it'll never stay ahead of inflation. It's not built to stay ahead of inflation. And it just doesn't work as far as a really good investment vehicle because anyway, there's a lot of reasons why we wouldn't do it. So just be cautious in it. And again, we came across somebody that was just a young married and he was putting like $1,000 into this thing. I'm like, do you have any savings? No. He still had student loan debt, still had car debt, still had credit card debt, and he was committing $1,000 to this thing a month. Does that make sense? But he got talked into it. It's going to be this really cool thing, and it has to be sold. Pretty hard for people to really get past the fear and greed. And that's why I love people understanding this and where this fits in within their own time frame. Real estate, there's a scam about everywhere you want. The biggest key is I'd ask how they're licensed. Make sure they're licensed. And if they're not licensed and it's just some private equity thing and there's legit ones out there, you need to make sure. Actually, the legit ones won't take your money unless you qualify for it. Does that make sense? You have to be a millionaire in net worth or $200,000 in income for them to take your money. If they're truly legit, they're going to say, man, we're not taking your money because this will be a disaster. If this thing blows up, you're going to come after us. What they're looking for is the accredited investors. And there's some good ones out there, but you need to understand what you're getting into and understand the costs associated with those things. Ask for documentation, never just take it on word. Trying to think. Penny stocks is one that we've come across a lot lately. We picked up a client about 4 years ago, and he's a penny stock junkie. I think it's like an addict. He just thinks you buy these things at 10 cents and 5 cents, and eventually they're going to be worth dollars. The one thing that the market is really good at is pricing things. They're pricing the stock. The market is efficient. I know the last 12 years a lot of people don't think it's efficient. It's doing exactly what it's supposed to. It's very efficient in getting the weak companies out, making companies get stronger balance sheets. There's a lot of cool things that go on with it. But he's probably had 50 different penny stocks that he's picked over the years. And so he's like, yeah, I'm like, you're not buying a penny stock through me. Just because the likelihood that they're going to work is so low. But you get these, again, greed that you can hit one and it's going to go forever. So just be very careful on things that you're looking at. Questions on any? Go ahead.
I would also say be careful with day trading too. You know, and generally I notice the only time I see day traders is when the market goes up. I never see them when the market's going down. And also be very careful with foreign currencies. You know, I told you the story about this one guy says, well, I feel inspired that I should be buying these foreign currencies. And I said, fine. He said, tell me, what do you have to make those decisions? And he says, well, I've got this $50 program. And when I buy, it's green, and when I sell, it's red. And I said, well, who's on the other side? He says, well, I don't know. And I said, well, let me tell you, there are thousands of companies with 10,000 PhDs, a lot smarter than I, and billions of dollars in computer systems. And it's a zero-sum game. Means in order for you to win, they have to lose. So what do you think about that? And he says, well, you're probably right. You know, and I wasn't questioning anything, but I was just saying, we need to understand these zero-sum games are very, you know, when you've got billions of dollars in computer systems and 10,000 PhDs smarter than any of us here are, then there's some concerns.
We did, I have two clients. They owned a company, and what they did is they built the red arrows or green arrows for a company back east. And they made a grundle of money. So I'm with one of them, we do the planning for both. The company is now separated and they've gone different ways. But the one guy, I'm like, so why am I putting your allocations and building your stuff? And he goes, oh, and he's the software developer. He's the programmer. He says, the markets are just the markets. They always come back to the mean, okay? There's no surprises out there. What he was saying, he goes, I was given the task to put a software together that had indicators that go red or green. But what happens is people let their behavior mess things up, and they do. And Brian's right. There's definitely people that were smarter than him, and he's brilliant. But there's definitely a lot of people ahead of him.
I had a cousin come to me who actually did the same thing, and he sold like 50 different licenses, and I think he sold like almost $500 a piece. He says, Uncle Brian, he says, the problem is this just doesn't work. What can we do to fix it? The problem is it just doesn't work. And he sold 50 licenses and $500 a piece.
It is, because what's their revenue model? Their revenue model is to get monthly subscription to it. And so they had like 22 indicators. The next highest was like 17, so they had more indicators than anybody else. Half the problem is you don't even understand what those indicators are indicating half the time. So the other partner to this side of the story, he doesn't do that. He's actually gone into real estate and done well, but he actually day trades, and he's actually done pretty well. We have a software that allows me to link in to see where he's day trading at, so I can see him. So when he says, man, I just got killed or made money, but here's the key. We all have certain talents, and I think he's got a pretty good skill, but he is pretty non-emotional about it. He never puts a lot of money into play to make it work. But again, he knows there's days where he loses his shorts and there's nothing you can do about it. So I don't think long term he'll be successful, because eventually you get greedy or you get really fearful and you make really bad decisions, or he could just be out of the country and couldn't have a cell phone to where he could execute some trades or get out of a position. So, I mean, his whole life is wrapped around when options expire, when he has to input, his whole life is built around this machine. But he's got a very specific goal for his account. Once he hits that account, he's going to take that money and accomplish his goal, and that's it. Now, he's far more aggressive. So we do all this planning. He does his own investments, but we do all the comprehensive planning, and we charge him a fee for it. But that's what's fun in this industry, is you get to see some really cool things. The saddest part, and I think the thing that I'm starting to get a really good knack at, is we can look at a situation, and nothing's worse than when you have somebody that's a couple years out of retirement or going into retirement, and you realize they are not going to make it. They're going to run out of money. They'll lose their house. Something's going to go wrong, and they're just really one financial hiccup from just financial ruin.
What's your advice for that? I mean, so what more can you do? I mean, just live on a stricter budget?
You know, they're living on a strict budget just because they have to at that point. Save as much as they can. We don't even go into the investment world. We're just trying to, if they have debt, get the debt paid for and just get savings built. And to make sure you have some health care coverage, some Medicare supplements and those kind of things, because those are the things that kind of attack people when they're retired, is the health care cost. But it's hard. But what's neat is when you have a client who's saved more than enough, and as long as we don't make some really bad decision, we have what's called a personal rate of return. So we might say, okay, you might say the S&P performs 10%. We take their account and just say, okay, for what you want to accomplish in your life, you only need to generate, let's say, 6%. So we call it a personal rate of return, to accomplish everything they want with a little buffer. Why is that important, to have your own rate of return if you have enough money? Think about it. What does it do to your risk? You can reduce it. Okay? You're not reducing it because I'm turning 65 and some table says I should reduce it. You're reducing it because you don't need to have the risk exposure anymore. And so if you have more than enough money to satisfy what you want to accomplish in your life with your goals, it allows you to reduce a certain amount of your risk to accomplish that, which gives you more peace, and then you can carve off a big chunk of money to go off and change the world and do good and do what President Hinckley talked about. So it's a fun industry. So my advice going out, get your student loans and your debts paid for as quick as possible. Save, 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 save. If you do have a 401k, I would put into that, especially if you have a free match. But you gotta focus on keeping out of debt. Debt is a very comfortable bedfellow, meaning it's easy if it's $100 a month, and then $200 here, and then a $300 and $400. Next thing you know, you're at thousands of dollars of payments. And you're like, how did we get here? So you want to get to a point where you have no monthly obligations. And everything now, from your phone to your internet to everything, they want you to do it how? Monthly. Anything you can pay quarterly or annually or semi-annually, I would do it. My life insurance, anything I can pay, I pay annually. Just so I have a low monthly thing, and then I can really budget a lot better for that. So then when it comes to your investments, keep your costs low, keep diversified. Take that allocation that you've built and just follow it. And then if you're ever talking with somebody like me, just ask a lot of questions. Make sure you get the questions answered before you're comfortable. And if they don't tell you how much money they make and they just say the insurance company covers, you don't pay me a commission, the company just pay me, walk away. Find somebody that's willing to disclose that out to you. And so it's important to know because it has a direct impact on the products that you're going to be buying. So I'll be hanging out. Any other questions?
You talked about if you wanted to go into the financial planning industry, you just have to go for it. Like, what does that mean? Like, what do you do about it?
I think the hardest part, if I had to go back and do it different, is I started with Beneficial Life. And I like the insurance industry, but I like the planning and the investment side. So I had to get all my licensing by myself and had to pay for it and study and then provide for my family. And it was just hard. There's companies out here now, especially in Utah, Fidelity, Goldman Sachs, you have a lot of internet bank stocks, Ally Bank, they're headquartered here. I would go get on with them if you can, just to have them pay for your licensing, but also to get a really good breadth of what's out there. The knowledge that I had to learn on my own. If I would have gone to like a Fidelity, I think I would have cut my learning curve probably by about 6 or 7 years. I mean, it's that significant to get in somewhere where you can learn. Now, you have life insurance companies that will kind of pay you a stipend. It's more of a loan. Hey, we'll give you 20 grand or 10 grand to get started. And they'll give you some good planning concepts, but you're still structured in a commission-based product. You got to move product to get paid. I like Fidelity, Goldman Sachs, and those kind of places because they actually pay you a salary. You're there to answer phones. You're there to giving people advice over the phones. Primarily, it's Fidelity stuff that they're giving you advice on, but it gives you a really good breadth of what's going on and knowledge. Edward Jones has one of the best training platforms out there, and they do a pretty good job. But if you could, I would get with an independent advisor and work with them. The hardest part is that's the most expensive thing that I will ever do in my business is to bring on another advisor to help out, not knowing if they're going to work out or not. Fidelity has budgets that they can blow through and expenses that they can do that. I don't have that luxury, nor willing am I to do that necessarily until I really find that right fit. So if you can find an advisor to sit in with, I've sat in probably 10 different advisors' offices at different times just to watch, to see how they do things. But I'm always an open door. You can always come and see what we're doing and how we're doing it. We keep it a pretty close ear to the ground on independent advisors that are hiring, and they're starting to hire. So I would just look around and just try to understand what you want out of it. But yeah, I'd be happy to answer any questions after this. So.
I just have one more quick question. So I'm headed to Los Angeles to work with a private banking team with Merrill Lynch, and their minimum clientele is like 10 million. So
Yeah.
It's more of the private banking level. But have you heard of anybody kind of going to do the analyst role and then coming back trying to do the independent?
I think, yes, and I think there's actually more success in that because you work with such a high level of planning, and then when it comes down to below the 10 million or 5 million, it becomes really easy. So I think that's a great way to do it. Now, if you could do that, I'd do that in a heartbeat. Because you get paid well, you get paid to learn, and it gives you confidence in working with people that have that kind of money. I think it's great.
And you can feel good that the personal financial, the things that we've talked about in this class are consistent with the things that people at private wealth management firms do. It's helping people understand their risk tolerance and helping them put their investments together and making sure their insurance is right and making sure, you know, their retirement plan is all set up. So I reiterate what Jason said, that you guys coming out of this class, you guys know, you know, as much or as probably most financial planners do in their first 2 to 3 years of operation.
Easy.
I think the framework, this principles-based and application-based framework is a very good.
That's an exciting opportunity for you. That'll be good. Awesome. Go ahead.
I have a question about private equity returns.
Okay.
What have you seen that is reasonable? Because I know I've heard exorbitant numbers.
Private equity?
Yeah.
That's a pretty broad category because you have hedge funds that have been destroyed in the last 2 years. Generally, you're going to probably be 3 to 4% above the market, so probably 13, 14%. But it's understanding what you're investing in. That's the hardest part with private equity. You don't really understand the box that the investment's working in. Blackstone, which is a private equity firm, just bought Vivint or put a lot of money into Vivint. That's a big, well-known, you understand it. But to invest in Blackstone, I think it's like a 10 million minimum kind of a thing. So, hey, thank you. I'll answer that in a minute.
We have a couple of MBA students here. Your box is over here as well. Make sure, everyone, that you get your stuff out of the box. Where's the box right now? Right there, so make sure you get that there. The roll should be around.
So, it depends on what the
Thursday
private equity is guaranteed.
at 8 o'clock, financial plans.
So some private equity is just to go opposite of the markets.
Thanks, everyone.
The two largest